Hi everyone, my name is Imaobong. Today, I want to walk you through the transformation journey of VanWest, a company navigating the change to electric vehicles under serious market pressure. But this story isn't just about strategy or operations. It's about how HR stepped up as the driving force behind successful change. Let's move on. Here's what I'll cover. First, I'll set the scene with Van West transformation context. Then, we'll explore the implementation phases, HR's biggest integration challenges, and how communication played a key role. And finally, what made the transformation successful. Before we dive into what made Van West transformation successful, it's important to understand the world they were navigating. This slide gives us a snapshot of the key challenges they faced, from shifting technology to cultural differences as well as change resistance. It wasn't just about business shifts. It was a full organizational transformation, and HR was right at the center of it all. Now, VanWest is undergoing a major shift, moving from traditional gasoline vehicle production to electric vehicle. But this isn't just about adapting to regulations, it's about transforming an entire business model, workforce, as well as mindset. The change? Of course, ensuring operational continuity while preparing employees to step into a completely new future. Now, this slide shows Van West knew that change doesn't always go as planned. What did they do? They adopted a blended approach, combining structure with flexibility to adapt. Now, this allowed HR and teams to respond quickly to challenges, keeping the transformation on track even when things shifted. This next slide showed that they did not just jump into it. They grounded their change process in theory. They used the Kotter 8-step model to create urgency and buy-in, as well as Lewin's model to help people move through emotional phases of change. That is very key. What was the idea? The change needs structure, but also very important, compassion. For culture, one of the biggest challenges we all know is culture. You have a Western company known for traditional automotive practices, and then an Asian EV manufacturer with a total different work style. Bringing these together are what's going to take more than just paperwork. It will take intentional people strategy. Now, for engagements, this is where HR stepped in. They were not just in the background. HR led the way working on employee retention, helping staff navigate transformation, as well as aligning both companies around one cultural vision. Now, this shows that it's a summary of the transformational journey. The investment was made, but what happens next is what matters. Through five drivers, which is transition, adaptability, leadership, culture, and engagement, Van West HR team guided the company toward what they called an integrated organization, not just a major. Remember? But a team that moves as one. Now, the process was carefully staged. First came pre acquisition assessments, identifying leadership fit and key cultural differences. Then came communication as well, training, monitoring, and engagement programs. Now, for phase one, which is assessment, before the deal was even finalized, HR was already evaluating leadership compatibility and cultural risk. For phase two, which is communication, they didn't just wait to talk to employees, they started early, sharing the vision and reducing fear. For phase three, training, it had to do with traditional auto workers. They had to learn EV manufacturing fast. HR funded hands on training programs to help them to transition well. Then phase four, monitoring. Post acquisition, they didn't just assume it was working. They used employee survey, feedback loops to ensure morale and progress. And then for this phase five, which is engagements, from shared team events to cultural programs, HR worked to create a new unified identity while honoring both heritage. This slide shows now all that sounds smooth, right? But let's be honest, integration is never without friction. Talent transfers had to be done without causing disruption. Compensation structures had to be rebalanced fairly. Traditional employees needed retaining, and some people resisted the change altogether. And none of this would have worked without communication, not just emails. HR held executive town halls, built digital platforms, and created real time feedback loops. They also invested in cross cultural training and multilingual resources to bridge the gap between East and West. It wasn't just about sharing information, it was about building transparency and trust. Now, before we break down the key drivers of acquisition success, let's pause here because none of what you are about to see would work without people engaged, connected, and aligned. VanWest HR didn't just roll out policy, they built connection through town halls, digital platform, real-time feedback, and by truly listening to people. This human-centered foundation is what allowed every other initiative from planning to culture to actually stick. Now, let's begin with planning. Van Way succeeded because they did not rush. They set clear goals, built structured timelines, and stayed consistent. I mean, throughout the transition, planning wasn't just a phase; it was a commitment to doing it right. And then next is retention. They did not just acquire a company, they acquire talents. And they knew the EV transformation couldn't work without keeping those high performing employees with high technical expertise. So retention was strategic, not accidental. Then came collaboration. They broke down silos, not just departments, but national and cultural ones too. Collaborative workforces and shared knowledge sessions help build unity and purpose. Culture is often underestimated, but not here. Van Way's focus on building a shared culture that respected both legacy organizations. HR worked to align values, norms, and behaviors so no one felt like a stranger in their workplace. Now, that is key. And finally, analytics. What gets measured gets managed, right? HR use data to track, engagements, monitor progress, and adapt strategies, in real time. This is what made the integration agile and evidence-based. So what really drove Van West transformation, if I may ask? It was a combination of these five pillars: planning, retention, collaboration, culture, analytics. Together, they created a strong foundation for integration, one that prioritized, people just as much as performance. To wrap up, what does Van West, journey teach us? You and me. This in that in a world of electric vehicles, global acquisitions, and constant disruption, the real power still lies in people. People, people. The real power still lies in people. And when HR leads with strategy, structure and empathy, transformation isn't just possible, it's sustainable. In Van West case, now, HR wasn't just supporting the business. HR was the business strategy. All of this is grounded in research scholars. Scholars showed us time and time again that HR is the deciding factor in major success, especially in cross cultural contexts. This presentation was a design. it was designed in such a way that it wasn't just to let people see what we've done, but it was validated. Thank you so much for listening.